Dinosaur, written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell to keep up to date with the latest installments.
Chapter 9. The Death Card. Come rain in anger, bend arboreal bough. This child's reigning tantrum, a new god for now. Bringer of the storm, driving clamour and row. A lost world unmade, the night the new world fell. Excerpt from the private diary of Tim Norris. That's it, said Wright. Now hit return and... Yep. He activated his comm. This is Wright and Gleason, Station 234 to Chief Nasaki. We're all done here. Over to you. Thank you, Doctor and Captain. Got it, Hero replied, a tinny voice through the small speaker, followed by a click as the comm disconnected. So what now? Gleason asked. Now we wait on station in case it all goes to hell, I suppose, answered Wright. They were very specific about us hanging around until the end. Doesn't inspire one, does it? You're a right comfort to me, do you know that? Gleason realised what he had said and chortled softly, trying to cheer himself. A right comfort, get it? Wright raised an eyebrow. You're welcome, Elvis. Hey, there's no need for that, sport. Sorry, Percy. You're a really unfriendly bloke, do you know that? Gleason commented plaintively. Wright grinned. You got that? Right? He said, chuckling too. Not because the joke was in any way funny, it was simply laugh or cry time. Gleason frowned. Do you think they can land this bucket? We'll soon find out, Wright replied, holding his hand out. Captain? Gleason took it and shook it. Doctor? Good luck, they said together. Within moments, the first tremors began. They experienced weightlessness for a few seconds in the corridor where they were stationed, before being slammed back down to the deck hard. Ah! Me bloody backside! Gleason bawled as Wright's head collided with the rail to which their safety harnesses were tethered. It hurt like hell, but he somehow remained conscious as blood from his brow began to obscure his vision. You okay, Righto? Gleason shouted with concern above the ambient roar which was beginning to fill their world. I felt better, Wright replied miserably. The ship bucked again, throwing them sideways as well as up and down. I wish we were in proper crash seats. Don't use the C word, mate, bellowed Gleason above the howl of wind and the now constant groan of strained metal. Wright was feeling a little confused by the blow to the head. I didn't, did I? He asked, mortified. Gleason laughed, but his levity was rewarded with another plunge. Ah! He shouted again as his buttocks struck deck once more. I wish I'd taken that bloody number down, he wailed. The buffeting grew worse, shaking them like rag dolls, and Wright was struggling to remain conscious. The number? He managed through gritted teeth. The one on the back of the ship, bellowed Gleason. The noise was cataclysmic now. Wright tried again, with the last of his strength, shouting, Which damned number? How am I driving? Gleason screamed as they descended into blackness. Huge blue. Douglas's perception of planet Earth stripped to the most basic as it headed straight for him at many tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. Time seemed to dilate, natural order postponed. Huge and blue warmed up through the oranges to red, with a supplementary hot. Red, hot. Atmospheric friction scored glancing blows at first, gradually gaining purchase on the hull and causing the ship to shake with escalating violence. Douglas felt like an observer, his unconscious mind working a side action processing sound, heat and light as ruby red seared to blinding white. Vibration numbed his whole body as white hot and white noise became one. Later, he would be left with a vague recollection of people moving about the bridge of the New World and someone shouting, the voice far off. Douglas wondered who it could be as G-forces swept him to a meta-reality just this side of oblivion. The greater the force crushing him to his core, the more he stepped outside himself, outside events. He hazily contemplated the possibility that he might be dying. As the universe raced by at impossible speeds, he seemed to have all the time in the world. Rebecca Mawar had filled the minutes preceding their descent by seeking the advice of Spirit. Lowering the small table from the back of the seat in front, she laid out the tarot cards, always her go-to when personally anxious, calming her through habit. On this occasion, however, the cards offered little comfort. For Beck, reading tarot had always been part tactile experience, part emotional connection, but now she merely turned the cards. She understood their message intellectually, yet it meant nothing to her. It was the strangest sensation, like someone had severed a comlink while she continued talking to herself, eventually realizing there was no one there. However, all such concerns became secondary as the ship began her descent. The whole of embarkation seemed to rattle and shake, the passengers lurching from side to side in their crash webbing as the new world fought the friction, air made almost solid by speed. The roar of fire outside was matched only by the roar of fear inside, the viewports showing nothing but white flames as a brilliant surreality cocooned the passengers completely. All was screams. 1,000 shades of white assaulted Beck's senses as she fought the blackness seeking her. Her consciousness was hanging by a thread when a curious sound penetrated the tunnel walls of her awareness, working inwards for her attention. A dog? While her fellow passengers alternated between blacking out and waking up screaming, the primal howling of a dog's distress cut across it all. This single constant, amid the fading in and out of human perception, gave her a focus, a connection to the world at the basic levels of instinct and emotion. She grabbed it like a lifeline. Managing to turn her head slightly against the G-forces, she saw him. Reaver. Was that his name? A harness around his shoulders was clipped into the seat's safety belt arrangement, and standing behind him, from Beck's perspective, were the people. She had been holding on so tightly to the deck of cards that they sprang from her grasp, flying everywhere in chaotic collusion with the madness all around her. Grappling for them, she was able to snatch just one from the air and hold on to it. Invisible forces pulled her head back, her arms down. She couldn't read its face. Reaver's commentary continued, but through a haze Beck realized it was not for her or indeed her companions. He was communicating his distress to the ethereal figures at his side in the aisle. There were 4 of them, completely unaffected by the jarring motions of the ship. 3 men and a woman. 2 were soldiers, 1 was middle-aged, the other fairly young. The 3rd man looked younger still, boyish even. An expression of great sadness marred the woman's face, but she held out a hand to calm the distressed animal. Reaver whined, crouching and conscious amid the maelstrom. Hunter's reflexes, honed through 100,000 fathers, kept him planted. Conversely, the rows of seated passengers were thrown back and forth in vicious synchronicity, like ears of wheat in the wind. Bang! The whole ship rocked. Everything not tied down flew through the air. Douglas experienced the vague notion of a cup and a saucer seeming to hover for a moment. Bang! Time returned, and he was in the middle of it. The same man was still shouting. My God, he thought, it's me. I'm shouting. Listening to what he was shouting made sense of the last few seconds. The bridge came back into focus suddenly and sharply. His ship, his crew, surrounded by fire and clamour. Reverse thrusters to maximum, he heard himself cry. Years of conditioning brought forth his next order without need of conscious interference. Bring main engines online. I'm trying, shouted another voice. 5 seconds. The heat was suddenly unbearable. Douglas, falling irresistibly back inside himself, could see white flames engulfing the forward viewports of the bridge. Huge and blue were gone. A console exploded somewhere off to his left. That won't help, he thought peripherally. The new world bucked savagely. flinging pieces of hull past the windows, all instantly vaporized on their way to oblivion. Blackness reached for Douglas once more. Instinct told him it was the final darkness, and he fought with all his remaining strength to stay in the light. When he heard the prayer, he was not sure if his mind was playing tricks on him. Someone was praying. Would that help? Maybe he should try it. "Bring the engines online!" someone roared from a distance. He was disconnected again, unsure if the voice was his own. "Engines online!" An answering bellow filled the bridge, followed instantly by pain. The sudden forces pushing Douglas into his safety harness were intolerable, and despite his effort of will, he blacked out. Only to come round, to black out again. Failure's embrace seemed to close all around him, when a subtle change drew a new fate for his crew, like a drop in pressure prickling his skin. The deafening roar became merely too loud for comfort, as white returned to red, gradually reintroducing blue. Huge was everywhere. He was merely too close to see it. Cooling enveloped the battered ship like a balm, quenching the sudden nova as the last few minutes' insanity bled back to reality. Remnant ticks and pings of contraction were the only testimony to the crucible survived. "Where are we, Lieutenant?" His voice again. Good. He recognized it now as normality crashed back in their wake. "Bringing the ship around onto our pre-calculated trajectory, sir," replied Lieutenant Singh. "You mean we're going to make it, Sandy?" Douglas asked, afraid to believe. The pilot flashed a quick grin over his shoulder. "Was there ever any doubt, Captain?" "Steady as she goes, Mr. Singh," said Douglas, sighing with relief. Something snagged at his memory, making him look around. "Where's my damn coffee gone? That was my favourite cup." After a seemingly endless time, the ship began to calm. A healing blue gradually replaced the fires of hell at the window, and with it their terrors began to subside. Despite much groaning and vomiting, a relative peace settled over embarkation. The forces pushing Beck down relented. She lifted her head to find the ethereal woman staring directly at her. When she spoke, it was across the room as across the void. "Tell Donald it wasn't his fault, and tell him that I love him. I will always love him." Beck was left with a sense of the familiar. Sudden understanding followed. The four had found her, and would remain ever near. With that realization, a name shunted into her foremind. Jamie. The apparition of Dr. Jamie Ferguson flashed a last inscrutable smile, before fading from the medium's sensitivity once more. Feeling dazed, Beck's confusion was more physical than spiritual, the belated effects of a teeth-rattling re-entry. She knew the 4 dead crew members had reached out to her for a reason, but at the moment it eluded her. She closed her eyes in relief and drifted for a while, grateful that she was no longer alone among all these people. As the roaring outside petered away to ordinary wind noise and buffeting, Beck remembered the card still clutched in her hand. She knew in her heart that nothing would ever be the same. Almost afraid to look, she unfolded it, revealing the grinning skull of the death card. Roughly 99.2 million years ago, Earth, mid-Cretaceous period. Pre-dawn Gondwana languished in deep blue stillness, the clean night air heavy only with the scent of pine. At the edge of a vast plain, a huge neck craned over the canopy just inside the tree line, a pair of docile eyes turning gently skyward. Sniff, sniff. Darkness always bred fear in the forest. The nocturnal hunter, epicenter to each ripple of dread among the trees, was ever close. Of course, for some, these pygmy wars were of little consequence. For some, their natural enemies were simply too small to hurt them anymore. Bang! The silence was ripped by a sound louder than any of the ears to hear it had ever heard. Bang! Bang! Again. The sky was instantly smaller. Blackened and bulky, it encroached upon treetops bent double by the sudden and colossal winds tearing between them, around them, at them. Something beyond huge, clipped, cropped, and collected the topmost boughs, with a rending as terrifying as it was unexpected. And then came the flames. Shocked awake, every creature in the forest stared up into the night, fire reflecting in 1,000 wide eyes. Even giants, barely able to recall fear, began to realize that size was suddenly no protection at all. A crack of lightning, followed immediately by a rolling boom of thunder, shook the ground, providing the final aid to memory. The stampede was born in the white of an eye, but swiftly matured into madness. Roar! The panicked herd moved, unstoppable. A sluicing rain began all at once, adding misery to turmoil as the bellows of living titanosaurs inflated to a deafening crescendo. Driven by terror, they smashed their way through the forest's edge, each massive footfall compressing sodden ground to sucking, drowning mire. Lethal traps for their much smaller neighbours, startled from slumber just moments before, only to be sent running or winging for their lives, desperate to escape the trail of death and destruction left by these gentle giants turned monstrous. Above it all, the black, westerly sky swallowed the USS New World whole, completely unseeing of mankind's first ever scar upon the planet. The bridge rang with the latest round of warnings and alarms. "Turn that damn row off!" Douglas shouted above the din as Baines burst through the doors. She had done all she could down in engineering during entry to atmosphere. When the New World gained the relative calm of the lower stratosphere, she took the opportunity to return to the bridge for the final landing. "Where are we going?" she called over the buffeting, strapping into her seat and silencing the noise. "Who the hell knows?" Singh shouted into the post-klaxon, relative quiet, his barely checked panic palpable. "Trust us to land on the night side after all that blue sky and sunshine. Could anyone call up a map? We made sensor passes days ago." The commander called up the scans taken from a few million kilometers out and frowned with concern. "They're not very detailed. Did we manage to get anything closer?" She looked towards Douglas hopefully. "We didn't have time to look around," he snapped reproachfully. "We were too busy diving at Mach 50 with the computers down." "I didn't say anything," she replied, holding her hands up. "Oh no," Singh muttered. The two senior officers snapped back round. "What?" they asked in unison. "It's raining." "Sandy!" shouted Baines. "You scared the hell out of me." "Well, when we get back, I'm going to have a few choice words for the engineers at NASA," Singh called over his shoulder. "Why, what's wrong?" asked Douglas. Singh turned around for the briefest second. "No bloody windscreen wipers," he snapped. "I can't see a damn thing, but if either of you has any preference for a crash site, now would be the time to call out." "Didn't crash my ship," bellowed Douglas over the wind noise. "That's an order, Lieutenant." "Can't you land by instruments?" asked Baines, fear overriding rational thought for a moment. "What, using all these handy triangulating satellite feeds we have, you mean?" the pilot retorted. "Oh," mumbled the digital girl, lost in a pre-analog world, adjusting quietly. "We are also short of a few landmarks, Commander, what with no human being ever seeing this continent before." "Right. Sorry, Sandy. Stay calm." "Stay calm? Certainly. Now it's too dark to see. Maybe we should stop work and hold a poetry evening, perhaps, "All right, keep your hair on," Baines rejoined, scanning the topography ahead. "Our proximity to the ground is becoming intimate, people," Singh pointed out, the high-pitched edge of fear in his voice. All right. 5 miles straight ahead, a large clearing in the forest with a nearby river." She glanced at Douglas. "This could work for us, for now anyway." He nodded. "Sandeep, head for that clearing and hit the brakes, or we'll be drilled into the earth." "No, Captain, that was Jules Verne. This is Journey to the Middle of God knows where, sir. Don't panic. We're all right, said Singh, fighting a war on 2 fronts, one against the ship, the other against himself. "If only one of the other fleet pilots were here." "You'll do fine, Sandy." "Instead of me." The clearing in the forest was before them almost at once, the ground terrifyingly close. Singh gave an involuntary ululation of dread, stuttering into silence as the USS New World miraculously came to a full and final stop. The rain smashed off her hull, flowing down her flanks and over her wings like flying waterfalls as she hovered. "Well done, Mr. Singh. I think I speak for all of us when I say that I'm glad you were here." Douglas spoke quietly into the brand-new calm. "Now, set her down gently, Lieutenant." "Yes, sir." Singh slowly and expertly lowered the 550-metre-long behemoth towards the ground, her enormous mass mocking, flicking away the natural laws of the world, offering her safety and respite as if they were mere guidelines. 100 metres. The pilot counted down, back in the office now, after the wild ride. 50 metres. 20 metres. 15. A slight shudder gave the impression of resistance. 10 metres. 5, and... There was no boom, nor really even a bump. Squelch sort of described it, magnified by over 200,000 tons of mud displacement. Douglas released the straps from his safety harness and cautiously walked over to the pilot. "You did put the landing struts down?" he asked. Singh looked up at him. "I did, but I reckon they're probably about 15 metres under the mud now, Captain," he answered. "Ah, that was the..." Douglas began. "Yes, sir," Singh cut him off, preempting the question. The bridge crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. "Are we really 100 million years in the past?" Baines asked into what felt like an unnatural silence. There was a quaver to her voice, which could have been awe, or perhaps even a little hysteria after the day they had survived. "Aye," replied Douglas, his focus out through the viewports. "We're really early. Way too early. It's just not right." He was unsure if his eyes were playing tricks on him, but he fancied that black was paling to the blue of a rapidly approaching dawn. "Guests who arrive too early are never welcome," Baines commented distractedly. She was still a little stunned. They all were. "Aye," repeated Douglas gravely. "But our situation is a wee bit more serious than merely surprising Mother Earth while she's still in her bathrobe pushing the Hoover around." Someone began to laugh, and before they knew it, they were all laughing, jumping out of their seats and slapping each other on the back. Baines even tried a little victory dance. It wasn't well done, but that didn't stop everyone from joining in and hooting for the sheer joy of a life continued. Mother Sarah jigged around like a novice left in charge of the keys to the communion wine on New Year's Eve. "Thank you, God!" she called out in jubilation and absolute sincerity. Douglas pulled Baines and Singh into a hug. "I can hardly believe it," he cried. "We had to make it so we can leave a little something for the future," Baines replied quietly, as Singh grabbed Sarah, dancing the priest around the bridge. "Knowing about that has kind of got me through all this." Douglas nodded his understanding and opened a channel across the whole ship. "This is the captain speaking. People, we are down. All stations please report." Cheers erupted across the New World and the pod. Everywhere, people released safety harnesses and jumped from their seats to hug friends and loved ones, joy pushing back any exhaustion in a willing suspension of disconsolation. A dog barked like all his tea times had come at once, wagging his tail so hard that he and his mistress went down in a flailing of limbs, laughter, and licks. Outside, the world wrapped up its last remaining secrets in protective darkness before the new dawn consumed them. Within an hour of the new world's arrival, the sun rose over the old world, and it was magnificent. Almost 5 days of constant worry and tension left the crew like a dam burst. Eventually, their exuberance calmed, as did the storm outside, and anyone not hospitalized, in jail, or guarding those unfortunates crowded around the windows in embarkation. Refugees from a world of smog, steel, and concrete, they took it in turns to press their faces against the portholes, each marvelling at this completely unsullied landscape and its fantastic creatures. Theirs was a vista aglow with every green of plain, forest, and mountain, while snowy caps sealed away all the emeralds of the earth from the azure touch of a brand new sky. This was a place none of them had ever seen before. This was the planet Earth. Douglas stood alone on his bridge, lost in thought. The crew and passengers needed a little time to take in their surroundings. He understood that. Meanwhile, he used that time to work out just what he was going to say to them. Staring through the front viewports, he found himself distracted by what he saw. How could anyone be immune to such beauty? Whoever said blue and green should ne'er be seen had ne'er the plains of the Cretaceous been. He smiled to himself as he corrupted the old saying in his mind, perhaps not brilliantly. It was something he remembered from his childhood back in Scotland. That had been a beautiful cloudless day too, in many ways like this one. His parents had taken him on a day trip to Abb's Head. He remembered his father explaining how the place derived its name from St. Ab, the first abbess of the abbey founded in the 7th century and the remarkable sister of a remarkable brother, King and posthumously Saint Oswald. Here now, he understood the yearning of his ancient forebears to seek and comprehend the face of God, to find meaning in the relentless grind of time. He recalled the warmth of the sun on his little boy's face as he tried to scale the rocky cliffs at Coldingham Bay, weird and otherworldly shaped. He could still picture the blueness of the North Sea, ancient beyond his imagining, until today. What a mystery it had all seemed. And now he was lost in a past, well over 16,000 times the age of the very sea that little boy had believed was eternal. Perhaps 8 or 9 at the time. He recalled pulling a green sweater over his shirt with blue jeans. His mother had told him to change it because blue and green should ne'er be seen. The great North Sea, he mused. The sea, and even the cliffs themselves as he knew them, were once unfathomably old to human eyes. Now they all waited to be taken out of the box, brand new, but not for a mountain's age to come, possibly several. It is remarkable how children soak up facts and names so easily. In his mind, Douglas could still hear his father reading from a plaque. The Coldingham Rock Stratum may have been laid down as early as the Ordovician period. He wouldn't have remembered the name for 5 minutes now, nor Ab, for that matter. From when he stood today, those rocks had begun their long existence 350 million years ago, so that 100 million years from now, a little boy could climb them and get into trouble for tearing his jeans. He smiled again, staring down his past, hindsight all in the future. Understanding that even the North Sea's time on this earth would be fleeting at best, he just hoped and prayed that it would be at all. Everything was so mixed up, even the days. The explosion which destroyed the wormhole drive was last Sunday now. If Singh was correct about his dates, after less than 5 days in space, it was Sunday again. His head ached. He held it in his hands, trying to massage some life back into his tired mind. Almost anything they did would alter something. Who knew just what kind of changes might be wrought by his band of castaways? My God, we're going to have to be so careful, he thought somberly. The enormity of their responsibility fell upon Douglas like an Acme anvil. People are fond of the expression, in 100 years, who's going to care? And it's easy to be flippant when the future is unwritten. But he was all too aware that one balls up here could mean there would never be anyone to care. The realization made him feel at once old and yet like a lost child. How could he guide his people through this time and place when virtually none of his memories or experiences had even happened yet? What could he draw upon? A wave of homesickness and despair crashed over him, and it took a while for his natural determination to slowly reassert, allowing him to lock the inner little boy away in his heart for a better day. We are going home, he vowed. I don't know how, but we're going home, and Scotland had better damn well be there when I get back.
Dinosaur, written by Stephen Llewelyn and performed by Chris Barrie. New installments uploaded each week. Subscribe for more. Visit the link in the description for free New World companion stories, available for download as ebooks.